Imagine waking up tomorrow and your financial struggles, your worries, your unanswered prayers are gone. Imagine that while you sleep tonight, God Himself is orchestrating blessings, opening doors and creating wealth that you have never even dreamed of. Yes, while you rest, miracles are happening. But here's the secret. Most people sleep through the very opportunity God is giving them. Tonight, I'm going to show you how to align your faith, your words, and your thoughts so that when you awaken, the manifestation of God's abundance is already at your door. Stay with me, because the power that works while you sleep can transform your life in ways you can't imagine. I promise you, what you are about to hear will not just inspire you, it will activate the creative power of God in your life. If you leave even a moment of this prayer unheard, you may miss the exact instruction that could shift your destiny. This is not just a speech, this is a blueprint for divine wealth creation. And tonight, I will guide you through every step, every word, every prayer, so that you can sleep and awaken to the life God has already prepared for you. Faith is the invisible force that moves mountains and opens doors that no human hand can unlock. It is the seed from which every blessing springs and the foundation upon which God builds abundance in the lives of those who dare to believe. And yet so many walk through life expecting results without planting this seed, expecting miracles without watering the ground with consistent prayer, and wondering why their efforts yield so little, not realizing that the moment faith is sown in the heart, the soil of your life begins to prepare itself for a harvest that surpasses human comprehension. And the secret is that God responds to the sincerity and depth of your faith rather than the quantity of your words, because prayer is not merely a list of requests. It is the water that nourishes the seed of faith. It is the channel through which divine energy flows from heaven into the reality of your life. And when you pray with a heart full of expectation, even while you rest or sleep, the spiritual law of sowing and reaping begins to take effect, unseen and often unnoticed. And the most remarkable thing about this process is that it works independently of your understanding, because God's ways are higher than your ways, and His methods are beyond human calculation. And so when you speak words of faith tonight, when you declare your trust in God's provision, when you pray with gratitude and expectation, you are activating a force that is already working in the unseen realm to bring forth wealth, health, favor, and opportunities that align perfectly with His plan for your life. And even if your mind doubts or your eyes do not yet see, the seed has been planted and is germinating in a way that is perfectly timed, because divine timing is never early and never late. It is always precise, and your job is not to force it, but to remain steadfast, to continue sowing faith through words and prayers, knowing that God multiplies what you have planted in ways far greater than you can imagine. And consider the power of the spoken word in this process. For the tongue is not just a messenger of thought, it is an instrument of creation. And when faith-filled words are spoken over your life, they begin to manifest reality in alignment with God's promises. And this is why prayers said with intention, prayers spoken in the quiet moments before sleep, prayers declared in expectation rather than desperation, carry an eternal weight, because they become the catalysts for God's miraculous interventions. They are the invisible currents that transport divine provision into your life. And there is a rhythm to this process that mirrors nature itself. For just as a farmer does not dig up the seed every hour to see if it is growing, so too must you trust that the prayers you have sown are working beneath the surface, quietly breaking through barriers, quietly rearranging circumstances, quietly aligning people and situations to bring forth the wealth you are meant to receive. And faith without action is dormant, but faith that is paired with persistent prayer becomes a living force, a spiritual engine that powers your destiny. And understand that this is not limited to material wealth alone, because God's abundance encompasses peace, wisdom, opportunity, relationships, and the clarity to recognize the blessings He has already placed in your life. And the seed of faith you plant tonight is capable of producing all of these outcomes, because the source of true wealth is the infinite reservoir of God's provision. And when you link your heart to this source through prayer, you are connecting to an unstoppable current, a divine river that cannot be blocked. And there is something profound about planting seeds of faith before sleep, because the human mind rests, The body rests, but the spirit remains active, and it is in this quiet, receptive state that God can work most powerfully. When your conscious efforts pause, the spiritual forces begin to align. When your worries are set aside, the universe becomes fertile ground for the seed of faith to grow. And you must realize that every word of faith, every act of trust, every moment you choose to rely on God rather than fear is a contribution to the miracle that is already forming in the spiritual realm. And miracles require patience. Miracles require persistence. Miracles require the willingness to keep praying, keep believing, and keep speaking the words of faith, even when nothing in your natural circumstances appears to be changing. Because the seed planted today may take days, months, or even years to fully manifest, yet the growth is inevitable because God's promises never fail, and He honors the faith that trusts Him in the unseen, the faith that expects victory while still in the midst of the battle, the faith that believes wealth is already on its way, even as the problems seem overwhelming. And there is a profound joy and peace that comes from knowing that your efforts are never wasted, that your words are never empty, and that every prayer spoken with faith is a drop of water, nourishing a seed that is destined to flourish beyond what your mind can conceive. And this is the principle that has transformed the lives of countless people. Those who learn to plant seeds of faith consistently, to water them with prayer, to speak them boldly in the quiet hours of the night, and to trust without hesitation that God is working even when there is no visible evidence. And the beauty of this truth is that it is available to you tonight, in this moment, that you can begin to sow your own seeds of faith that will grow into wealth, into favor, into breakthroughs that honor God and elevate your life. And there is no greater opportunity than to combine the power of prayer with the persistence of faith. For together they create a force that cannot be resisted, a momentum that carries the promise of prosperity, a current that sweeps obstacles away and ushers in the blessings you have been waiting for. And consider the spiritual principle that faith, once sown and nurtured, attracts not only blessings, but also the wisdom to manage them, the discernment to recognize them, and the courage to walk in them. And when you begin to treat prayer as the water to your seed, when you begin to speak faith-filled declarations with expectation and gratitude, you are not merely asking God for wealth. You are participating with Him in the creation of a reality that mirrors His goodness. And this participation is active, it is dynamic, it is transformative, and it is the way God chooses to multiply what you have. And in this process, you learn to trust not only in the blessings, but in the giver, not only in the harvest, but in the hand that cultivates it. And this trust becomes the foundation of a life where miracles are not occasional, but natural, expected, and continuous. And there is nothing more powerful than knowing that as you sleep tonight, the seed of faith you have planted is being watered by the divine hand, growing quietly, invisibly, yet powerfully, preparing to break through into manifestation in your life, into your finances, into your opportunities, into every area that God has intended for abundance. Every breakthrough begins with alignment, not only of your actions, but of your mind, your spirit, and your heart, with the eternal promises of God for wealth, abundance, and favor are first conceived in the spiritual realm before they appear in the natural, and yet many walk through life trying to force results without ever aligning themselves with the source, without ever tuning their inner thoughts and attitudes to the frequency of God's provision. And the first step to alignment is understanding that God's Word is not just a book of stories or history. It is the blueprint of your destiny. It is the map that shows you how to move from limitation to abundance, from struggle to supernatural favor. And when you meditate on His promises day and night, when you speak them over yourself and over your family, when you internalize them until your spirit resonates with their truth, you are creating a spiritual harmony that attracts the very blessings that God has prepared for you. And alignment requires intentionality. It requires focus. It requires a willingness to reject the noise of fear, doubt, and negativity that surrounds the world. And as you begin to train your mind to dwell on God's promises rather than the lack you see, you start to notice a subtle shift, a shift in your perception, in your expectations, in your response to opportunities, because your spirit begins to recognize what is already available in the unseen realm. And this recognition is powerful because what you focus on expands, what you declare with confidence takes shape, and what you believe with unwavering faith manifests in the natural. And so alignment is not passive, it is active, it is disciplined, it is the process of intentionally choosing to see your circumstances through the lens of God's provision rather than human limitation. And it begins with the mind, for the mind is the gatekeeper of your reality. Every thought you allow to dwell becomes a seed. Every declaration you make plants a future, and if your mind is aligned with fear, doubt, or negativity, the seeds you sow will produce lack and stagnation. But if your mind is saturated with God's promises, your thoughts become fertile soil for wealth, opportunities, and favor. And alignment also requires your spirit to be sensitive to the leading of the Holy Spirit, because the Spirit is the one who brings clarity, direction, and confirmation. And when your spirit resonates with His guidance, you will find doors opening that you could never have forced with human effort. You will find ideas and inspiration flowing into your life that feel divinely orchestrated. And you will begin to recognize that abundance is not just about what you can see, but about what you can sense, what you can hear, what you can receive in the quiet moments of communion with God. And this is why regular meditation on His promises is crucial, because as you dwell in them, they become part of your consciousness. They shape your beliefs, they shape your expectations, and they shape your actions. And action, when aligned with promise, carries divine power, because you are no longer moving in isolation. You are moving in concert with the creative force of God. And there is a rhythm to this alignment that requires patience and persistence, because the human spirit often resists change, often clings to old patterns of thought, old habits, and old limitations. And yet the power of God's promises has the ability to transform every area of your life if you allow it to saturate your mind and spirit consistently. And when your inner world is aligned with the eternal, your outer world will begin to reflect it naturally, almost effortlessly. And this is the principle that underlies every miracle, every answered prayer, every sudden provision, because God responds to hearts that are ready, to minds that are in agreement with His word, and to spirits that trust His timing. And the wealth that God wants to create in your life is not haphazard. It is intentional, it is precise, and it always follows alignment. So the question is, how do you achieve this alignment? How do you bring your mind and spirit into agreement with what God has already promised? And the first step is awareness. Awareness of your thoughts, awareness of your words, awareness of where your attention goes, because every time you dwell on lack, every time you entertain worry, every time you give space to doubt, you create resistance to the flow of God's provision. And alignment requires replacing those thoughts with the truth of His promises, speaking them aloud, declaring them boldly, and allowing them to saturate every part of your being. And the second step is surrender, surrendering your plans, your timelines, your understanding to the wisdom of God, because alignment cannot exist alongside control and stubbornness. It requires humility. It requires a heart willing to be guided, a spirit willing to be shaped. And when you surrender in this way, you create a spiritual openness, a receptivity that allows God's abundance to flow freely into your life. And the third step is persistence, because alignment is not a one-time event. It is a continual process, a daily decision to tune your mind to His promises, to feed your spirit with His word, to reject fear and embrace faith. And every time you do this, you reinforce the alignment, you strengthen the connection, and you prepare the soil of your life to receive the harvest that God has prepared. And there is power in repetition, in declaring the same truths day after day, in allowing them to sink deeply into your consciousness, because repetition cultivates belief, belief cultivates expectation, and expectation becomes the atmosphere in which miracles are born. And this alignment also affects your actions, because as your mind and spirit resonate with God's promises, you will naturally begin to make decisions. It takes steps and sees opportunities that are in harmony with His plan, and even challenges will begin to feel different, because you will see them not as obstacles, but as instruments in the hands of God, working to refine you, to position you, and to prepare you for the wealth and favor that is coming. And this is why alignment is not just about receiving, it is about transformation. It is about becoming the person who can handle the abundance, the wisdom to steward it, the discernment to navigate it, and the faith to trust it. And when your mind is focused on God's promises, your spirit is sensitive to His guidance, and your actions are consistent with His word, you create a resonance, a magnetic field, a spiritual channel through which blessings flow unimpeded. And this alignment is not theoretical, it is practical, it is achievable, and it is available to anyone who chooses to pursue it with discipline, prayer, and expectation. And the most extraordinary part of this process is that it works even while you sleep, because as your mind rests, your spirit continues to operate, and as your heart remains aligned with God's promises, the unseen forces of heaven begin to arrange circumstances, opportunities, and connections in ways that your conscious mind could never engineer. And so tonight, as you prepare for rest, as you engage in meditation, prayer, and declaration, understand that you are not just asking for blessings, you are creating alignment, tuning your mind and spirit to the frequency of God's provision, preparing the soil of your life, and positioning yourself to receive the wealth, favor, and abundance that has already been promised. And the beauty of this alignment is that it is ongoing, dynamic, and powerful, capable of transforming your reality from lack to abundance, from struggle to supernatural favor, from limitation to limitless opportunity. And when you practice this consistently, you begin to notice doors opening, ideas forming, connections appearing, resources multiplying, and you realize that the power of God's promises is not just in what they say, but in the alignment they create within you, aligning your heart, your mind, your spirit, and your actions to the very flow of divine abundance. And this alignment is the secret to manifesting wealth while you sleep, to experiencing provision before you even ask, and to walking in the fullness of God's blessing in every area of your life. Rest is not merely the absence of activity, it is an active part of the divine process, a spiritual partner in the creation of wealth and abundance. And yet so many fail to recognize that while they labor, while they strive, while they exhaust themselves, God is calling them to participate in a rhythm that includes rest as a sacred instrument. And when you learn to rest in faith, when you learn to sleep with expectation, your body, mind, and spirit become aligned with the divine flow of prosperity. And rest allows God to work on your behalf in ways that human effort alone could never achieve. Because while you are awake, you are limited by your understanding, by your energy, and by your perspective. But in the quiet of rest, the spiritual realm becomes active, and the unseen forces that govern favor, opportunity, and breakthrough begin to orchestrate circumstances in your favor. And this principle has been proven throughout history in the lives of those who trusted God enough to step back from frantic striving, to release their burdens into His hands, and to allow His provision to flow. And there is a sacred wisdom in understanding that rest is not weakness, it is not idleness, it is not a passive surrender to circumstance, it is an active partnership with God. It is faith in motion in a form that the eyes cannot see, but the spirit can feel. And when you sleep in expectation, you are signaling to the universe, to heaven, that you trust the process, that you believe the seeds of your faith and prayers are already germinating, that you are prepared to receive the harvest. And this is why your mindset before rest is crucial, because when you go to bed with gratitude, with declaration, with unwavering belief, you are creating an atmosphere for divine multiplication. You are creating a spiritual environment where miracles can manifest. You are preparing the soil for wealth to sprout and grow, even as your body rests. And it is not only the physical rest that matters. It is the spiritual and emotional surrender, the letting go of worry, the refusal to dwell on lack, the conscious decision to trust God completely. Because every time you replace fear with faith, every time you replace anxiety with gratitude, you are strengthening the partnership with the divine that allows blessings to flow unhindered. And rest allows the creative power of God to operate without interference, because human effort is limited, but God's work is limitless. And when you learn to release your control, to step out of constant striving, to allow rest to be an instrument of faith, you open the door for supernatural provision. You open the channel for doors to swing open, for ideas to form, for resources to multiply, and for unexpected opportunities to arrive. And there is a divine order to this process, because God works while you rest, while you sleep, while you dream. And yet the key is not merely to lie down, but to lie down with expectancy, to rest with purpose, to enter a state of trust that the wealth, favor, and abundance you have prayed for are already moving toward you. and consider the power of alignment between action and rest. For when you plant seeds of faith through prayer, when you align your mind and spirit with God's promises, when you take steps in the natural that reflect your belief, and then rest in confidence that God is completing the work, you create a cycle of prosperity that is unstoppable, a rhythm that draws blessings toward you in both the seen and unseen realms. And the act of resting in faith also cultivates resilience. It restores energy, it strengthens clarity, and it allows your heart to remain open to receive the manifestations of what God has already prepared. And there is a mysterious beauty in the way God multiplies blessings during rest, because while the human mind may see delay, the spiritual realm sees progress. While the human eye may see inactivity, the hand of God is at work, moving pieces, opening doors, preparing people, and orchestrating circumstances that will align perfectly with your life when the time is right. And this is why rest must be intentional. It must be conscious. It must be a deliberate act of faith rather than mere fatigue. Because when rest is entered with expectancy, when it is accompanied by prayer, meditation, and declaration, it becomes a vessel for miracles, a conduit for divine abundance, and it transforms the way you experience wealth, opportunity, and provision. And understand that this principle does not diminish the value of effort, of diligence, of work, but rather complements it. It completes it. It ensures that your labor is multiplied, that your investments of time, energy, and faith are maximized, and that the results are not dependent solely on human strength, but on divine orchestration. And rest also allows the mind to process, to dream, to envision, to strategize in alignment with divine guidance, because often the solutions, the ideas, the breakthroughs that change the course of your life come not in moments of frantic action, but in moments of quiet, of stillness, of reflection, of faith-filled rest. And this is why spiritual rest is an essential ingredient in manifestation, because it demonstrates trust, it cultivates faith, it allows divine energy to move, and it prepares your life to receive blessings in fullness. And there is a power in knowing that while you sleep, while you lie in the stillness, the wealth, favor, and abundance you have prayed for are already taking shape, that circumstances are being arranged, that opportunities are being created, and that people and resources are being aligned to meet your need. And rest also renews your perspective. It restores your vision. It allows you to wake with clarity, with energy, with focus. And when you wake, you are able to act decisively, to seize the opportunities that have been prepared, and to steward the wealth and blessings that have been created during the quiet hours. And consider how rest strengthens faith. For when you consistently rest with expectation, when you consistently surrender control and trust in God's provision, your belief grows, your confidence deepens, and your spiritual authority over your life increases. Because faith and rest are partners. They operate together, they amplify each other, and they create a supernatural flow of abundance that cannot be stopped. And rest also produces peace, and peace is essential for prosperity, because a peaceful heart is receptive to guidance, open to ideas, free from anxiety, and aligned with divine timing. And when you cultivate peace through faith-filled rest, you create an environment where miracles are possible, where wealth is manifested, where favor flows, and where God's purposes for your life are fulfilled. And this is why tonight, as you prepare to sleep, as you prepare to rest, you must do so with intention, with expectation, with declaration, and with trust, because the act of resting in faith is itself a spiritual practice, a form of prayer, a method of partnering with God in the creation of your wealth. And it ensures that your life is not dependent solely on your own effort, but on the divine orchestration that works in perfect harmony with your faith, your prayers, and your alignment with God's promises. And the ultimate truth is that the more you embrace rest as a partner in your prosperity, the more you will notice the miraculous ways in which God provides, the more you will experience the multiplication of your seeds of faith, and the more you will awaken to a life where wealth, favor, and abundance flow freely. And rest also strengthens endurance. It renews hope, it refreshes motivation, and it allows you to continue the work of manifestation without fatigue, without burnout, without discouragement. And it is in this state of faithful rest that your partnership with God becomes most powerful, most effective, most transformative, and most fruitful, because the combination of your faith, your alignment, and your rest creates a spiritual synergy that works tirelessly, even while you sleep, preparing every blessing, opening every door, and orchestrating every detail of your wealth, favor, and divine provision.